Watercolor. Some tools of the trade that I will be using include paper, which I have a selection of, water, paintbrushes, of which there are many different types, and these are not all of them, as well the paint. First, we need to choose the colors that we will be using and mix them up on the palette. To do so, you dip your brush in the water and pick your color and agitate it with the water. You bring it over to the clear palette, and after doing a few of these, you'll have a nice rich color happening on your palette. You do not want to be able to see through. If, for instance, your paint looked like that, that is too watery. You need it more thick and more substantial, like that, where you cannot see through the clear lid, to get a really good color. For this project, I have picked a green color that I mixed with yellow in order to get this beautiful light green color. I also chose a darker green color that I thought was quite nice and very evergreen-like. And then I added some brown to it to give it an even deeper green. For the wet on wet method, you get your paintbrush wet and you draw out a tree using the water on the watercolor paper. Hard to see, but it is there. The color of the water is a little bit green, so you can sort of see that. Then what you do is you just take the color you want and you drop it in there where that water is, and it will just kind of flow around there. Sometimes, if you want, you can even pick up your pad of paper and move it so that the color just kind of fills in all that watery space. And you get a really cool effect happening. It just goes where you've placed the water on your picture. So as you can see, I've kind of got a tree shape happening just by moving the paper around. And there's an evergreen tree. The idea of dry painting is where you just load your brush with paint, and on a dry paper that has no water on it, you draw on your tree. A little bit different than the water one. You can see a little bit more texture happening even there at the bottom where my brush got dry and there wasn't as much paint left. Whereas there's still water sitting as it's drying, and I can still move that color around in there to try and make it darker and different. Lastly, we can create an impression of a forest by just quickly painting some trees. Really messy. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is that ish concept again. But we let them dry in between, and after they dry in between, we can layer it and make more. And then you can see a forest. Here I have finished layering a few different colors on that first forest that I had created. You can see how, although there's no actual trees drawn out, it does indeed look like a clumping of trees, does it not? It's a forest. Let's say you've made a mistake. Oh my, what am I gonna do? It's a disaster. Can it be fixed? But of course, this is watercolor. All you need to do is agitate that painting with extra water and you can maybe create something different. So you just take your brush with water and you agitate the edges and you pull the color around to different areas, wherever you want it. If you direct it in different areas, you can make a faint looking bush around. That mistake now just looks like a watery blob, but it's not finished yet. Once that blob is dry, you can add more layers again to make the layered tree effect. And you can see how it just makes it look like there's a bit of a background now, or faded trees in the distance. It's kind of an exciting way to fix up one of those dreadful mistakes that might happen. If you want, you can even add some blue around the edges and agitate and blend the green into the blue. And now it even looks like you have a bush surrounded by sunny sky without clouds. One final technique you can use if you're still not happy with the results is to using the same colors that you painted your picture with, load your brush up lightly and gently tap using your finger or some other surface to splatter a little bit of paint over your picture. To complete this grouping of trees, I have directed blue splatter around where the sky is, and greens and brownish greens that match the trees over the tree area. It gives it a finished look. If you aren't quite satisfied with the results you had before, this might be the changing element. I tapped the brush against my finger to get this effect, and the brush I used was one with a thinner end. There you have it, a very quick watercolor instruction. Which method do you prefer? Do you like wet on wet, the dry on wet, the cluster of trees that was all done dry on dry, or the mistake that became a bush that ended up with splatter in the sky? You decide.